Good morning, everyone. The time is 8:31. I will call this meeting to order. Do we have any excused absences?
Yep, Guillermo and Kaylee will not be here. They let us know ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the excused absences?
So moved.
Support. I suppose there's no discussion on that, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any conflicts of interest with the agenda items this morning? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to public comment on agenda items.
Here we go. This is new too.
Morning.
My name is Glenn Swear. I'm from Trinity Reformed Church on the west side of Grand Rapids. And also from Together West Michigan. I'm here to offer comments about the Fulton and Market project. This is a $739 million project with plans to seek $543 million in public funding. The CEO of Progressive Companies said that this is about the highest and best use of this land along the river. Our question this morning is this the highest and best use of our public dollars? In other words, what's the opportunity cost of this project? What will we be giving up or losing in order to invest in it? And is it worth it? The transformational Brownfield incentive of this project means that more than $500 million in public money over 30 years that could otherwise go to public goods like schools, mental health, child care, and housing will go to pay back the developers the cost of building the project. We understand the argument that without this incentive, the project will not happen. However, our sense is that this transformational Brownfield incentive is to draw investment to underinvested areas that would not otherwise get it. That's not been the case with Grand Rapids downtown riverfront. With this incentive, $534 million in future public money will go back to developers. But all that comes back to the public over the next 30 years is $8.5 million for an affordable housing donation. That doesn't seem like the best return on investment. The proposed development is also located in a special downtown tax district already, potentially meaning that even after the Brownfield tax breaks are done, we'll still be missing out on significant public money from those developments. Here are some things that $543 million in public money could do. Give every licensed child care center in Kent County an extra $50,000 every year for the next 17 years for bonuses to raise the wages of their staff, 40% of whom are women of color working at a less than living wage. Build 2,200 affordable housing units with no other subsidy. Give every GRPS teacher a $12,000 a year raise for the next 30 years. Hire 760 youth program workers at $70,000 a year for the next 10 years to run programming for young people across the city. Grand Rapids is more than the downtown. Let's collectively engage in analysis of how all of Grand Rapids benefits from spending our tax dollars. As Together West Michigan, that's what we intend to do starting today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Deb Van Dynen. I'm a member at Oakdale Park Church in Grand Rapids and also Together West Michigan. And I'm also speaking this morning about the Fulton Market project. Over the past few months, a number of us have been walking our neighborhood around church in the 3rd Ward, knocking on doors, talking to hundreds of neighbors about the issues that are pressuring them and their families on a daily basis. Not one of them has said anything about a lack of development downtown. What they are talking about is hazardous traffic on Kalamazoo Avenue, in which parked cars, buildings, people have been crashed into, causing damage, injury, and even death. And there's no help to get some safety on that street. They're concerned about housing costs that keep going up, often paired with rising rents and absentee landlords who are not around and maintaining their property. A water main break that caused $10,000s of damage in their property, and the city apparently can't offer them any help on that. A desperate need for programs within walking distance for young people after school and in the summer, and concern for affordable quality childcare. It's striking that when families in the 3rd Ward, the most underinvested area of our city, ask for public funding to pay for damages from a city water main break, the answer is, that's not legal, that can't be done. But when other families ask for hundreds of millions in public funding to build stadiums, condos, and offices downtown, the response seems to be, let's go. We're all for development in Grand Rapids or a grand vision for Grand Rapids, but who is this vision for? Is it just the downtown and the riverfront? Grand vision must include all of Grand Rapids. This development promises 1,900 jobs. Are these going to be good-paying jobs with full benefits? What about childcare? It's promising $8.5 million contribution over 20 years for affordable housing. When you compare that to $735 million project, this is a slap in the face. We can do better than that. Before approving an investment as huge as the Fulton Market project, we need a robust public conversation that is very clear on how this development is part of a grand vision for the whole city and why this opportunity cost is worth paying. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to minutes approval. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our August 28, 2024 meeting?
So moved. Support.
Any edits or comments, updates? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, with that, we will move on to our action items. Our first item is a resolution approving and recommending a Brownfield plan amendment for the 975 Ottawa Redevelopment Project located at 975 Ottawa Avenue Northwest, Units 1 through 4. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Jess?
All right, good morning. So this first project is being proposed by MWS Ottawa LLC, and they are proposing to rehabilitate the existing building. That's 2 stories and 45,000 square feet. It is an obsolete building as well. The plan for redevelopment is to convert it into an entertainment facility known as Silva. When completed, the project is expected to include a restaurant, an event facility, outdoor seating, a gaming area, and a bocce center with 5 bocce ball courts. Additionally, the developer is also planning to include a small 28-space parking garage at the southern end of the building. Total project costs are estimated at $16.5 million with $15.1 million of construction costs, and they are seeking just over $1 million of reimbursement from the BRA for brownfield eligible activities, demolition, site preparation, lead and asbestos abatement, and public infrastructure improvements. Reimbursement on this project is expected to last 24 years with an additional 5 years of capture for the LBRF. The project has gone through the Planning Commission process and has received the necessary approvals there earlier this month. And they've also been actively engaged in the neighborhood. So they've gotten letters of support from the neighbors of Belknap Lookout, as well as the Monroe North Business Association. And then additionally, they are also seeking a 12-year obsolete property rehabilitation exemption, which will be considered by the City Commission alongside this request as well. And I'm going to ask Jared Belka to come up to represent the project today, and he can provide some additional detail.
Thank you, Jess.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to be here this morning. Mark Stecchia is the developer behind the project, and he apologized. He had a prior commitment this morning, so he apologized he couldn't be here. So you get me instead. Jess, as always, did a great job of introducing the project. This is one I know several people have looked at over the years. It's been vacant for a long time, which is why we're here seeking your support. It's a tough project. I've been through it a few times myself. A lot of water damage inside. There was mold in the southern end. The majority of the activities requested are demolition and abatement work that's necessary to move the project forward. As Jess described, there's kind of a northern and southern end. The northern end, if anybody's been in there, has a giant pool, which they're actually filling in. That was, I know, a challenge in how best to address that from many developers. But with an old building like this, sitting in North Monroe area, it comes with challenges, which is why we're here asking for your support. Mark's very excited to be part of the neighborhood. As Jess said, he's been engaged with the neighbors. Really excited to kick this off and add to the vibrancy of North Monroe. So happy to answer any questions, but certainly appreciate your consideration today.
Any questions for Jared?
I just have a comment to make. I too have been in this building. I think somebody before Mark had an option on it, and it was a lot of big ideas, but hard to kind of probably put them into action. I will also just second that Mark has been very engaged with the Monroe North Business Association, coming to meetings, wanting to talk to people. I think understanding how this, quite large complex would fit into the neighborhood. So I just appreciate those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I appreciate seeing additional recreational opportunities in the city. Lots of bars and restaurants, but it's nice to have some more options for, families and others to go and recreate actually in the city. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, hearing no other discussion. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our next agenda item is an emerging developer grant for the Rays Loft project at 1506 Cesar A. Chavez Avenue Southwest and 1521 Roosevelt Avenue Southwest. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Okay, Jess?
All right. So this is, as Jeff mentioned, an emerging developer grant proposal for M&M Bakery LLC, which is the Reyes family. So many of you probably are aware, but M&M Bakery is currently located at 1506 Cesar E. Chavez and 1521 Roosevelt Avenue Southwest. It's been a staple in the neighborhood and on that corridor for many, many years, I think over 25 years. And they are actually looking to move their bakery just across Roosevelt to 1500, which is right here, and are interested in redeveloping their existing property. So this first kind of grant phase that we're bringing before you today will allow them to better understand what opportunities and constraints exist on the existing building and the site. They are working with Fishbeck, and they've provided a scope of work for the project that includes conceptual site plans, a survey, a hazardous materials investigation, and then a facilities condition assessment. So total costs associated with the proposal is $41,500, which is what is being recommended for approval by you today. At this time, the hope is to try to add up to 22 apartments and 3 commercial spaces in the building, but this could change as they go through the pre-development phase. It's also expected that the team will come back for a second request, similar to what we did with M Village, for that next step in the pre-development to kind of help them further along into site planning and, the approvals from planning that are necessary here. We are also anticipating a request for a Brownfield plan to come before you at some point in the future, and we have actually already started the process for an obsolete property rehabilitation exemption on this property as well. So the Reyes family does meet the definition of the emerging developer in your policy and in your guidelines approved last month. And they will maintain at least 25% ownership of the property, and they are being supported by Collective Ventures, which is a partnership with Kurt Repart and John Van Kulen, who are both here today as well. So now I'm going to ask Yvette Reyes and her son Josh Reyes to come up and speak a little more about their project. And then, like I mentioned, we have the team from Collective Ventures here as well.
Thank you, Jess.
I'm nervous.
That's
okay.
Welcome.
My name is Maria Yvette Reyes. I use Yvette and own M&M Bakery for 34 years, almost 35, serving to the community of the West Michigan. Oh, my Lord. I'm using here my Puerto Rican English, okay? Serving to the community for 35 years, and I like a new opportunity to see my neighborhood growing. I was the first lady over there after the Dutch community when the neighborhood was completely empty. And then I say I came from Puerto Rico with no English at all, and then say I can do it. And then I'm trying to do it. I'm here, believe it or not, 35 years, almost 35 years. And I would like to keep this legacy to my son, Joshua Reyes. And hopefully he can do the same time like mom do it. So thank you.
Hey guys, I'm Josh, Joshua Reyes. So pretty much we want to reinvest into the community. Really just continue this legacy that she's began over 30 years ago. It's become another subsection of a Latino community, and so we kind of want to continue that. I think this project would be great. It allows us to bring the building into the future, provides employment opportunities in the future, and so yeah, just any support we can get with that would be great, and yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. You did great. Hello, everyone. Again, Kurt Repart from Collective Ventures. My partner, John, is in the back as well. I just wanted to share a bit about our team. The Reyes family will maintain ownership of both of these assets. We're going to just walk through them through the process. We're also working with Sella Building Group. So Peter Skornia came before you for the site right next door. He's going to go up a couple stories, so we're going to work together to match the two. And he's going to help us on this project. We'll be a partner, as well as Landon Jones from Quantum Construction, a black-owned GC, will be doing all the construction on both of these. So, but obviously the real stars are the Reyes family. It's been such a delight to meet them. They're so invested in the community, and there's no coffee shop. All I do is meet with people at coffee shops, and there's no coffee shop on that corner. And I just think that it would be tremendous for that neighborhood to have not just the bakery, but a place where you can sit and have a meeting and a real community gathering spot. So we're committed to community engagement. We met with Roosevelt Park once about both of these two projects, and we'll continue to meet with them primarily to address parking. But the nice thing is that the bank site has ample parking. The one thing is also that I'll say is I do think that we might be able to get 25 apartments in the project. So there's a chance that that number could increase depending on our work with Fishbeck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Discussion?
So I think, we heard from individuals throughout today, and I think, these conversations that we're having about investment are, yes, I'm Raul's daughter. But I have known this family because 15 years ago I got my wedding cake from them that people still talk about. No, for real. Yeah. And this past year my sister got her wedding cake. And so I think what seeing this connection point and connecting to Kurt, who was my past colleague, is that there is so much. You were the early investors in that neighborhood. You saw what that opportunity was, and you have been there. And you've been weathering a lot, too, with the construction that has been happening on that corridor. And so many of us around our commission table feel really bad about that. And how can we make sure that when we move forward with projects like that, we're compressing everything because of COVID. And we have to spend this money down, but we're also working with public utilities, and we're also just working with the reality of, I heard yesterday our construction work in the city is going to triple next year from our deputy city manager. So how do we continue to balance and support small businesses like you that have been a staple for our communities and our families, but now you're going to embark on this space, taking an asset that you've owned, and now offer places for individuals to live and to make that corridor. And that project yesterday that you all are connecting with Peter, I just love that design. So I'll be really excited to see what the design is to keep that character of the neighborhood. It's hard to kind of hold back a little bit of tears. Like, I don't, because my dad used to work on that corridor. My mom used to work on that corridor. And to see that someplace that maybe people didn't want is something that people are going to want to go to. They're going to visit there. All of you are out there. Go to lunch at one of the places on the corridor this week, because our small businesses do need our support. We've got past COVID, but just to see this investment is going to warm my heart for a while and show others that it's possible too.
Amen. Yes.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Yvette, for just taking on this hard work and passing on this generational opportunity to your family as well. So this one's an easy one for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner.
You all set?
Any other comments?
Sounds wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you back here soon.
Sounds
Yeah,
good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, actually, before Christian gets started, I did fail to mention earlier that we, as it may be obvious, we have no financial statements to review at this meeting. Primarily a function of what Christian is about to share, we need to review and approve the Brownfield reimbursements for this fiscal year, at which point Tricia can update the financials. We also have an audit that's buttoning up. So my anticipation is October, we'll have a robust package that we can review and approve at that time. So, okay, so we will move into the fiscal year 25 Brownfield tax increment reimbursements. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Christian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Good morning, board members. Before I begin my presentation in about 5 minutes, I just want to let the board and the room know that we're planned to have a severe weather drill. We have a lot of new things this morning. So I don't know how disruptive that alarm will be, but we may choose to recess for a couple minutes while that alarm is sounding. The rest of the building is going to be evacuating to the lowest level of the parking deck. We are allowed to stay in place because that would mean all of us walking down and back up the stairs. So the alarm's going to go off. We can stay in place, but if it's too loud to continue presentations, we may wish to recess until that alarm goes off. And then there will be another alarm, a quick one, letting everybody know they can come back up, but that one about 9:15 or 9:20 should be shorter. So I will begin presenting, but we may, the alarm bells may go off.
All right.
Thank you again. This is the time of year where the tax increment, captured tax values have been calculated, and as well as tax increment reimbursements have been calculated for fiscal year 25. This body has approved almost 100 development and reimbursement agreements for brownfield projects in the last 25 years. And so today I come before you with the request to begin those reimbursements for summer taxes that have been paid as of July 31st. If I could, I believe the easiest way to present this item is to point you to the large, ever-growing year-over-year spreadsheet that's in front of you. The first one I will reference is the large table, spreadsheet number 1. These are our active project reimbursements. These projects have come back before you. They've not only received approval, but come back before you for approval of invoices for eligible brownfield activities. I can just walk you left to right on this spreadsheet number one. The first couple columns are the project names themselves, the summer, winter, and other tax increment revenues, which lead towards the gross tax increment total in the middle column. From there, we have the net deductions of administration withholdings that fund our program and the staff here, as well as the 50% state education tax withholding required after January 1st, 2013. We also have adjustments year over year. Some projects, the taxable values may change, or they may have taxes that aren't paid that we accrue for future years to pay at such time that property taxes become current. Which leads to the column that we will request approval of today, the developer reimbursement column, which is for both summer and winter taxes. We try to bring this to this body once a year at this time to be able to reimburse both the summer and winter taxes that are due Valentine's Day. And then finally, in the final column to the right is the estimated balances, the principal balances that are still owed to these developers, just as a demonstration of what we still have to pay in future years to the developers of these projects. I'll stop there in case there are any questions on this first page. None so far? Okay, well, I will just quickly refer to the second page if you'll flip your sheet over. These two tables represent two other portions of our projects. Not only are we actively reimbursing developers for eligible activities with tax increment, but on the top we have the projects that have been approved, that have begun tax capture, but have not submitted invoices for their eligible activities. So we have about 10 of those projects that are underway, that are actively capturing taxes, but are not yet being reimbursed because the projects are either incomplete or they just have yet to submit their invoices for eligible activities. And on the bottom, we have the two sections. The top section are the projects that are completed. Completed meaning they are done capturing taxes for either developer reimbursements or the local Brownfield revolving fund. And I leave that there because it shows the success of the program and those completed projects that are fully benefiting the taxing jurisdictions. There we go. Those projects that are blank are complete. They're not capturing taxes anymore for the LBRF or for developer reimbursements, but they are fully benefiting the taxing jurisdictions without the tax increment in place, tax increment capture in place. The bottom dozen projects or so, those projects are either the developer has been fully reimbursed or the developer, the agreement with the developer has terminated, and we're capturing for the LBRF this year an amount of about $1.1 million. All right. Before I end, I just want to express a sincere thank you to our friends in the assessor's office, Charlie, Jordan, Lindsay, Paula. I want to say thanks to Roberta in our treasurer's office, our deputy treasurer. I also want to say thanks to Tricia and Chad who are here today. What you see before you is a couple spreadsheets, but it represents hundreds of hours of staff time to get this right, to pass audits, to provide, as I was telling Jeff earlier this week, this is not required. But we do this in an effort for accountability and transparency, especially as this program is growing 10% every year, and our estimated tax capture is over $18 million this year. So Thank you to all those involved, especially Tricia and Roberta. It's a heavy lift getting to this point, and we're excited to get the reimbursements rolling for FY25.
Thank you, Christian, and well done maintaining your bearing during all the distraction there. So, have any questions for Christian?
I have one. Christian, I'm sort of wondering out loud as I look at the three different spreadsheets. I'm curious if this body or your team would find it helpful, at the risk of adding more work, to maybe create an additional column that informs us on how many years remain on the capture.
Sure. Yep. That could be easily done. Yep.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
Yep. I'd be glad to do so. And I could do so for the LBRF as well, because they're either year 1 through 5. But yes, I could go through easily and look at the developer and developer reimbursement agreements and just tally how many years are left on each of those agreements.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none.
I just want to make a comment that this is, I've been watching this program evolve for a long time, and I'm really proud of your team and this group here, that we've been able to do this and get this much help out there and support, and it's a great program, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, moving on to discussion items. Our first item is an overview of the Fulton and Market Transformational Brownfield Plan projects. Sure, okay. No, these are just discussion items.
Okay, I'm finding that really distracting, so I compliment you for, yeah. Should we take a hot minute? I feel like it's almost done. But I haven't done this before, so. Here, okay. Let's take a chair.
Sure,
What do you think?
yeah, we can recess. What was it, 9:15, Christian, or?
I think this should be over within minutes.
Within minutes, okay. Well, yeah, let's just take a brief recess, let this pass, and we'll get back to it.
Thank you.
Okay.
morning.
Morning.
This is an introductory presentation and a conversation on a project where the development team has caught on to the momentum that activating the riverfront is a great idea. I'm going to give Joe Augustinelli from Michigan Growth Advisors and Brad Thomas from Progressive an opportunity to give you an overview on the project, but before we do that, I wanted to just provide a brief overview of transformational brownfield plans. The slide should look familiar. We did this back in March with the Grand Action Project, and so happy to answer any questions, but just wanted to lightly dust what we're talking about from a toolbox perspective. Okay, so along the left side there, you got the timeline. This was established in the state back in 17. It's been amended a few times. Ultimately, the points here are this is sunsetting in 27, or it's going to be exhausted based on the caps that have been identified in the statute. There is geographic distribution focus for the state when they're contemplating deals. Just to give you an example, for communities smaller than us, under 225,000, about a third of the projects need to be approved in those communities. So there's a couple of constraints on the program. The only other point on the left side there that I wanted to make on the additional underwriting requirements, typically underwriting requirements are like how much equity we're bringing to a deal, what kind of returns we're looking for, and while those things are established, there's also a component on, depending on the amount of capture being proposed, where there would be a third-party underwriter looking over the shoulder of the state, essentially. And so I just want to make sure that's known. The far right column is meant to be the transformational brownfield column, and the center column is meant to be for traditional brownfield TIF. Okay, so I want to focus on the far right column and just walk you through some of the eligibility, the costs, and what ultimately is the reimbursable increment at the end of the day for a transformational brownfield plan. So as far as eligibility, we've got our traditional eligible activities, and you're going to hear me use traditional in the sense that we're talking about demolition, lead asbestos abatement, public infrastructure, and site prep. But under a transformational brownfield plan, we also have to meet the bar of transformational, right? For a community like Grand Rapids, where that means it has to have a combination of residential, office, and hotel, and/or hotel. And it also needs to be in a mixed-use, previously developed and walkable part of your community. Based on the size of Grand Rapids, our minimum investment on the capital cost is $100 million. And the eligible, I was kind of jumping around on you there. I meant to say under eligibility that it qualifies in the same way as a traditional brownfield plan would. In this instance, this is 10 parcels that are all facilities. And then you have the qualifier transformational. So I'm sorry for the confusion on that. As far as the costs that are reimbursable, you've got your traditional ones there that you see: demo, infrastructure, lead and asbestos, and site prep. But you also have hard costs as it relates to construction and restoration, which is really amplifying the use of brownfield TIF for the state, which has really been a trendsetter across the country as far as the tax increment program. And so the main point to hone in on here is that construction costs are allowed to be part of the equation when allocating that reimbursement for revenues. As far as the taxes captured, I'm going to lump both the taxes captured and the tax exemption, those two bottom rows together, and just say that there's a total of 5 revenue streams with transformational brownfield plans. So we've got our traditional property taxes, which is 1, and there's an additional 4 here. So we've got construction costs that are really related to both material and labor. We've got income tax capture revenues. We've got withholding tax capture, and we've got sales and use tax capture. So opening up a wider breadth of being able to reimburse really sizable projects. So the Economic Development Department has received an application. We look forward to continuing this evaluation alongside the project team and all of you, as well as other stakeholders in the community like the DDA that are ultimately part of this conversation. With that, I'm going to invite Brad and Joe up to talk a little bit about more about the project, but I can pause if there are any specific questions about the tool.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to have a bit of a refresher. Does this board have a voice in this project? Whether
Yes.
it is, in our minds, transformational?
Yes.
Are we going to be able to have that discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Well, if
This
I may, there's some criteria, though, that needs to be met, right? So I don't know that we're in a position to, change the criteria.
Sure.
Right? So I think if the project meets the criteria, we're obviously going to have some discussion about that, but just to be clear.
yes, but this is a work plan, right? So it's like any other brownfield plan that we would ultimately look for your approving stamp from a resolution standpoint. This is just meant to be an introductory conversation, so no decisions today, but just hoping to get that dialogue going. Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah, yep, I see that eligibility, so the same as traditional, and then the transformational impact on local economic development and community revitalization. And that's something that this board will discuss as well as the department?
Yeah, I mean, I think there will be a recommendation from staff from an evaluation standpoint, and I think the piece there to pay attention to on the underwriting requirements is an important one, because we've got a few different sets of eyes on this to make sure that, from an economic impact perspective, we are looking at something transformational.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can I ask you a few questions before you step away? So this is a state-governed program, correct? The TIP.
Yes.
Okay. And the state sets out certain requirements on how we can collect the money, how we can spend the money, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Department of Treasury is ultimately part of that conversation.
And this is a fund to help communities grow development within their community. And this is a fund that is earmarked for very, very specific tasks, or what's the better word for me? Very specific.
It's very unique.
Yeah. We cannot, from what I understand, can we spend it? Can we spend the money that's collected in, whether it's, first of all, we're doing this because the land is usually pretty much vacant. We're going to be collecting more than we are now in property taxes and income taxes, and it is to build that fund.
Yes.
Those funds, I should say. But can we turn around and those taxes that we're collecting from, can we spend it on things like childcare or housing or some of the concerns that were brought up earlier?
Yeah, this is going to work like any other tax increment tool, where it's really targeting the difference between the base and the end values, and helping use that increment to pay back for the costs of the investment. I mean, I think that there's a lot here, right, with this project. I know you haven't seen it, but there's a lot of components to this, and I think leveraging a project like this to further activate the river, especially along the trail components there, right, is a really exciting opportunity for the
But we can't turn around and spend the tax increment that we collect on things like housing or childcare Or
Not outside, I mean,
it has
it's
to be spent reimbursing the people who are investing the
For-
money to
for the
help?
term of the, yes, for the term of
Right.
the increment.
For the term.
And the special, the additional revenues, revenue streams that you see there, a traditional plan can go 30 years, but those are limited to 20, and that's for good reason. And then post those timelines, the taxing jurisdictions would use the increment just like they would normally.
And
that
that
help?
income, yes, and that income 20 years from now is going to be a whole lot more than it would be if the project
Sure.
didn't happen. So we would have the money
Sure.
available
And if
to
nothing
do other
happens.
governmental.
Right. And if things don't happen, this is a reimbursement-based tool, and so, it's a bit of a leap of faith alongside the development team.
Sure.
And so something we're considering.
I just wanted to make it clear that this
Yeah.
is a very specific program for very
Yes.
specific uses.
I'm happy to answer
For the
more
timeline.
questions around that.
Yeah, Sarah, just, I guess to add to that briefly, and then we'll get on to the presentation, but we still have a base taxable value, so there will be revenues collected from the base property tax value that various taxing jurisdictions will use to, I don't know, any
Thank you,
number of
Chair, yes.
programs, right? So, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. I'm Brad Thomas. I'm a principal with Progressive Companies, and very excited to be here today to share the work that we've been doing. I've spent personally probably close to the last 5 years studying this section of the riverfront from Fulton down to Wealthy, and of course, more recently, the last 2 years, very specifically focused on the Fulton Market property. We've been studying, doing due diligence. I've been leading a team of consultants and advisors, and really excited today to share with you the vision of the property owners for this property. So we've put together a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm together. First, maybe if I introduce my colleague here, Joe Augustinelli. Joe's been leading the incentive portion of the work. Joe's with Michigan Growth Advisors, and we're going to sort of share the presentation today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the project, and then Joe's going to talk more specifically about economic impact and the Brownfield specifics of this opportunity. So with that, I'll orient everybody. I'm certain you're fairly familiar with the site, but currently comprised of 10 individual parcels totaling just under 7 acres of land area, bounded by the Grand River to the west, Fulton Street to the north, US 131 to the south, and Market Avenue to the east. The property is currently zoned city center. It is part of the Grand River Overlay District, and it is an unlimited height district for development purposes. Currently, I think most would agree, probably not the highest and best use of the land. I've heard some refer to it as the smile of our Grand River with a missing tooth. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about how we might introduce a transformational opportunity for this property. The vision, if you will, is to create this vibrant mixed-use development, bringing workers and residents and visitors and shoppers to our downtown and Grand River, and what is an emerging sports and entertainment district. It is the completion or advancement of this grand vision for one of the largest riverfront redevelopment projects in the nation. The planning I'm going to share with you today is really a build on prior planning that's been done here in the city. It's a build on the GR Forward Plan, the City of Grand Rapids Master Plan, the River for All planning, and then most recently in this image that you see in front of you is part of the master plan that Grand Action 2.0 did, looking at 31 acres stretching all the way from Fulton on the left side to Wealthy on the bottom right-hand side, just to orient people. The river's, in the foreground, Market Avenue is on the back. And it was really this study that Grand Action completed that identified the location for the Acrisure Amphitheater, what was previously the City of Grand Rapids Public Works Facility. The site we're going to be talking about is to the northern portion, the color is in charcoal or black there. But again, recognizing this was part of a broader master plan to really activate our riverfront. It focused heavily on river's edge, public use, public access, thinking a lot about how do we transform our river's edge from today that in a lot of cases has been designed more for flood protection. And how can we do both? Because we know we can do both in terms of providing both flood protection as well as activation and opportunities for people to engage with the river. And not only thinking about it from the land side, but also as we think about the restoration of the rapids. This portion of the river happens to be, once the rapids are restored, at Fulton Street is where the water is first stilled again. And so the idea of kayakers and water users having an opportunity to access this property from the water side as well as the land side. So exciting opportunity as we think about the transformation of our city. And ultimately, sort of the vision, if you will, bringing a picture to the words of this transformation of 6 acres of asphalt to something we see to be much higher, better use for this part of our downtown. I want to maybe just start by maybe reminding all, or maybe some are not familiar, when we first started and submitted our initial transformational brownfield application, the project was actually much larger. It included the soccer stadium and its adjacent mixed-use development. It included the amphitheater and its adjacent mixed-use development, as well as Fulton Market. In working together with the MEDC and Grand Action, there was an ask to separate the projects to allow the Grand Action projects to move forward. They're obviously, as we see, a building. They're moving at a much faster pace than this project. So really here we're today to talk about specifically the Fulton Market property, but do want to remind everybody the original vision in terms of transformation is sort of the catalytic and collective impact these projects will have in our community. Just to orient everybody a little bit to the site and understand sort of the opportunities and the influences. Again, it's on sort of a unique area on the Grand River. There's an elbow at this section of the Grand, which provides really unique opportunities from a view standpoint, both to the site as well as from the site. When we look at the S-curve, the property is abuts and adjacent to the S-curve. That creates both opportunity and something we need to plan around. The opportunity from the standpoint, again, from visibility into the site, when we think about the traffic that goes by and the visibility, but at the same time, we also know there's noise that's created by that. And so as we were doing the master planning, think about how do we organize the site and the development such as to buffer that noise. We look at where the site is located relative to the Van Andel Arena and now the under construction Acrisure Amphitheater, and recognize we're right at sort of this elbow and think about the opportunity from this growing sports and entertainment district in Grand Rapids, and how do we capitalize on that. We also see, and we all know, there's a skywalk connection there, and how do we integrate that skywalk connection into the development. And at the same time, and probably most importantly, we think about the river's edge. And how do we activate the river's edge? How do we connect and complete the trail system associated with this portion of our downtown? And so with that, we began to do our planning, and ultimately the master plan we've arrived at consists of 2 podiums, I'll call them, but larger parking structures with buildings atop. On the southern portion of the site, what you're seeing is the office tower. The office tower will have parking within to support that development and consist of just over 420,000 square feet of office. You see the site is sort of planned to be bifurcated with an extension of Weston Avenue. The idea, again, being creating connectivity to the Van Andel Arena, creating visibility to the Grand River, as well as access mid-block. And then on the northern portion of the site, we have another podium. This podium has parking within, but is wrapped with housing, and then has 2 towers, one tower consisting of 595 residential units, the second tower having 130 hotel keys together with condominiums atop. When we look at parking, will consist of approximately 2,500 parking spaces, and then all along the promenade and along the river's edge, envisioning retail shops and restaurants. We talk about sort of public space and green space, again referring to the promenade that's running through the center of the site, together with overlooks and trail system along the Grand River, connecting to As we think about the trail system, we see the work that's going on the amphitheater site right now and the investments that are being made with the trails there that will extend to Oxford Trails further west out to Ottawa County and ultimately Lake Michigan. And then plan is to make it all the way east to Lowell. So pretty significant trail connection. Again, same plan, but now in 3 dimensions. S-curve to the right. Again, you see the office tower sitting on top of its parking podium, the lining of the retail along Promenade, and then the second podium that has the residential tower in the center, and then the hotel and condominiums on the left or north side. In total, just over 50,000 square feet of retail and shops are planned. And again, this idea of creating very pedestrian-friendly, activated River's Edge. Again, same view, but from the east this time. You can see the connection into the skywalk system, and again the overall extension of Weston and connection down to our amphitheater. Exciting development for our Grand River. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and he can talk about the economic impact.
Thanks, Brad. Hello, everybody. Joe Augustinelli, Managing Director of Michigan Growth Advisors, which is a subsidiary of Miller Johnson, and we've been leading the Transformational Brownfield plan process for the last 2.5 years now. So as it's been mentioned, this is a very large project, so about $738 million of investment planned here. Some kind of headwinds in things that are driving cost in this project. It's important for everybody to understand the site we're talking about 150 years ago was actually in the Grand River. So our forefathers in the community, filled in this site to claim more land in the city. So that urban fill is, we'll just say, not ideal to build a really tall, heavy building on top of without it sinking down into the ground. So there's very, very significant underground geotechnical costs that are going to be involved with just getting to the surface before we then build, high-rise development on that site. And there's a reason you haven't seen that high-rise development occurring in the city for the last 20 years, and that's because it's cost prohibitive. The Transformational Brownfield program was created specifically to do these large-scale projects because they weren't happening anywhere in the state of Michigan. So that's an important point to keep in mind. So just as a refresher, we're looking at about 1,900 new jobs created as a result of the project, the majority of those being new high-wage office jobs of the corporate headquarters that would occupy that office building, 671 new residential units, 130 hotel keys. And the reason we're here today is the economics of this project simply do not work without the support of the Transformational Brownfield program. As mentioned, there's about $300 million of the, as Sarah mentioned, the 5 new revenue streams that are created by the TBP program. That's the number that's represented in that bubble that we're looking at right now. A couple important points, touching on some earlier comments to keep in mind. As was mentioned, you cannot use this incentive program unless you have $100 million or larger investment. So sort of some of the neighborhood scale projects that are also really, really important, and this just isn't the tool that the legislature created to fund those projects. It's also important to point out that this incentive is funded by the occupancy and use of the development. So if the development is not built and or not occupied, then there is no incentive created. So the project is being funded with $738 million investment of private equity and privately guaranteed debt on the project, and then the incentives are the necessary vehicle that allows that project to cash flow over time as the debt obligations are being paid off. The other piece is the piece that you're more familiar with. This $247 million number is the conventional real estate-based tax increment financing, looking at a period of 30 years of capture. As mentioned before, this is in the Downtown Development Authority, the DDA's TIF district. Tim's here as well. The DDA will be considering a request to allow 75% of the increment generated by the project to flow through the DDA to the Brownfield Authority, and have the Brownfield Authority capture and reimburse those dollars back into the project. And then the remainder of the 25% that's generated and kept by the DDA would be used to do other important work that the DDA does in the community, including potentially some of the trail work in and around this site and other areas of the downtown. And all that's necessary to take just under 7-acre vacant surface parking lot and create 1.2 million square feet of very dense, urban, vibrant, mixed-use development in our downtown. A couple other key metrics as part of the project, the ownership group is committed to funding affordable housing. We spent a lot of time looking at, could we integrate affordable units into the development? And it became apparent very quickly the cost of developing this project at the scale we're talking about developing it did not allow for very much room to build affordable units. And we realized that, through a partnership with the city, we could do a lot more to move the needle on affordable housing through a contribution to the city's Affordable Housing Fund that is a function of the transformational brownfield incentive that's generated on the residential units in the development. We're proposing the numbers 6.25% of the TBP revenue resulting from residential income tax capture be invested annually into the city's affordable housing fund. That number works out to about $8.5 million, and that's about 5.6 times the number of affordable units that we could otherwise develop if we developed affordable units within the development itself. The other big focus on the project is as Brad mentioned, we're still in the conceptualization phase of this project and are sort of moving through financial feasibility and then ultimately getting into design and contracting to move the project forward. The ownership group is committed to ensuring that minority-owned, women-owned, micro-local-owned businesses have an opportunity to share in the contracting opportunities that result from this. Ultimately, that's going to be agreements between the general contractor who has not been selected yet and their subcontractors, but we've established a participation goal of about $31 million of contracting opportunities with those groups. A couple other metrics. This is our first, I would say, public presentation, but Brad and I have been having some smaller presentations to sort of key stakeholder groups in the community, the Chamber, the Grand Rapids, the Hispanic Chamber, Experience Grand Rapids, Kent County Administration Leadership, Grand Action, the Convention Arena Authority, DGRI in the Right Place as well over the last several weeks. And this meeting is kicking off our more public outreach on the project. And we have outreach sessions scheduled with the Rapid, and then a lot of the neighborhood groups involved, the Heartside Business Association, Plaza Towers, Downtown Neighborhood Network, and the Heartside Neighborhood Association, all with the goal of getting feedback from others. Where can we improve on the vision, and making sure we sort of understand concerns that are raised throughout the process. And then in terms of schedule, if all goes as planned, the current, I think, expectation would be to have a request in front of this body at the October 16th Brownfield Redevelopment Authority Board meeting, where you'd be considering a request for recommendation of approval of the Transformational Brownfield Plan to City Council. And then the City Commission would be holding the statutorily required public hearing on November 12th. And then with final City Commission action slated for December, first meeting in December 3rd. If those things all occur, then the Michigan Strategic Fund would be considering their final approval considering final approval of the TBP at their February meeting, which is the fourth Tuesday of the month. And then if those things all occur, the plan would be to then, kick off the final design process and, currently targeting being under construction right around now next year. And that would be a phased start of the 3 towers. And then completion would phase in on a similar path, kind of fall 28 through spring of 2029. So that is our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll take the hard ones on TBP, and Brad can talk about the cool vision, but happy to address any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Joe and Brad. Any questions? Commissioner?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to revisit a couple of things. Can we go back to the slide that has the rendering that showed like the hotel condo, the residential, and the office tower? I thought that was a really good sort of visual representation. A lot of times we get these and it's hard to get the bearings of where exactly this is, but I never heard of that. It's the smile with the tooth missing. Okay, I'm going to use that.
Which vision is this? The
maybe it's the one right before. Yes, that one right there. And so just looking at the square footage of the office building, knowing that this body has undertaken, as we look across the street at the Fifth Third building, the Brownfield residential TIF work. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you all have been engaged with to be able to fill this commercial office building space?
Yeah, to the extent that I'm able to, yes. Sure. This is a design build for a single user. So as we've, and that user, as you look at the vacant office space throughout the downtown, the largest vacant space is about 100,000 square feet. This user needs 420,000 square feet, so there really is no option for them in the downtown within existing contiguous vacancies, which would be a requirement of a corporate headquarters. So we are not building spec office in the market.
Yeah, I think that was just a good point because I think, again, this body took on those projects to see how do we redevelop. So I don't want individuals to think that you're just going to do it and it's a wing and a prayer and, things like that when we think about what's transformational. So thanks for clarifying that, Joe. If you could also share I didn't hear any comments about just how this site could also, you talked about obviously the geographic location and kind of understanding all of those aspects, the structural aspects that will be needed. But we see a little bit of a rendering of green space. So we know that there wasn't like there was like this huge like tree canopy or something in this space. It was the tooth out of the smile. But could you talk about any efforts to maybe add to our urban forest canopy and or any other sustainability efforts as it relates to the build and design of this?
Yes, certainly. So you are correct. It is currently asphalt and vacant land and not a lot of tree canopy there, although there are some trees along the river's edge that aren't very accessible. But again, the goal, we're in the midst of master planning today. We are very involved on the work that's going on south down on the amphitheater site as well and on that river's edge. The city of Grand Rapids and DGRI have commissioned a study. They've in fact a design work. They've done the conceptual design from Fulton all the way down to Wealthy Street for the river's edge. They're going to be applying some of the Grand River Greenway funding that they received. Certainly, I believe one of the first portions will be the section on the amphitheater site. So looking at the continuation of a design that provides continuity from Fulton all the way down to Wealthy and integrating that in. Then the idea of the promenade, again, is, we look at River for All, it was a lot about how to provide more views and more access to the river. How do we create corridors mid-block? And that's really when we began the planning for the site itself. It was how might we, again, and leveraging the extension of Weston as a vehicle for doing that. We envision it as opportunities for true outdoor dining, collective areas for public performance. And we've even had, there's been dialogue, anybody, and I think I mentioned this in another conversation, time I go to the I go to the Van Andel Arena to see a Griffins game or something like that. I think about after the game, I seldom will run to the parking lot. I usually park across at the Fulton ramp just because how long it takes to get out, and we'll often go and find somewhere to have a bite or grab a drink. And thinking about something similar after an amphitheater show, walking back to where my car is parked, seeing sort of the promenade, its activity and life, and perhaps another performer, in the promenade, and sort of the party after the party, if you will. And the idea of activating the space has really been a priority of the design team.
About any of the sustainability efforts or any of the environmental aspects we could bring into this?
The property owners and developers are very committed to sustainability and will integrate. We're early in those stages right now. Generally, a lot of dialogue with the office user related to well building that, again, is integrating both sustainability as well as well-being into design. But again, early in the process, but commitment to sustainability.
Great. And then the last question I had is, so the 420,000 square foot of office space, be great to get that many people downtown and in our small businesses and even into our neighborhood districts as well. What are the parking dynamics that you all are envisioning?
Yeah, so we talked about, it is a prerequisite of the office user. They've been very clear, if they don't have parking, they won't be able to locate downtown. The concept that we're approaching, it's actually, we think, works fairly nicely given the location of this development, in the sense that about half of that parking, just over, I think around 1,350 parking spaces, are under the office tower, dedicated to the office user. Balance are part of the northern podium that's wrapped with housing. But the nice thing about that office parking is it's office worker by day, and then evening hours it's available for arena, amphitheater, other downtown uses. So it's very purposefully planned so that it's available for transit use after normal office hours.
What's the total number of spaces that you're projected?
Just right in the order of magnitude of 2,500.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thanks. Those are all my questions.
On the topic of parking, you mentioned that the parking for the office is right underneath the office building, and then towards the right of this display, you have the hotel and condos. Is parking for that under that, or is that, like, how does that?
It is within there. We refer to it as a podium.
Okay.
So the podium is where there's parking underneath. In this case, we've wrapped that parking with residential all around the edges, and then residential tower atop.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. Quick question more on hard infrastructure, right? And whether or not it's related to requirements from the developer side or maybe the city. But what, if any, kind of impacts are we looking at or considering or needed from hard infrastructure around interchanges, 131, Fulton? I mean, it's great to bring this much investment. It's great to continue this much down. But, I think about, water, wastewater, and predominantly, while not necessarily your responsibility, what is holistically being looked at when it comes, I would say, with US 131, kind of infrastructure around that and the other streets?
Yep, certainly. So first, I would share from a traditional infrastructure standpoint, water, wastewater, electrical, natural gas. The good news is that when the trunk sewer was relocated on Market Avenue that used to bisect the site, at that time, all of the utilities were sized and provided to the site. So again, very little off-site improvements necessary from core infrastructure. With respect to traffic, we absolutely acknowledge a lot of this development is what we refer to as a demand generator, and it's important not only to the community but also to the user that we understand what those traffic impacts are. Again, what we don't want is we don't want to have an office user that at 5 o'clock when the day's over, they get in their car and they can't get out of their parking structure because of traffic along Market Avenue. So what we're committed to doing is to undertaking, working together with our partners at the city, doing traffic impact studies, understand those implications, and working together to mitigate those as we get further down the road in design.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, I have a question and a comment. My question is regarding the office tower. Is there an anchor tenant or tenants that you're in discussions with? And that question really has to do with the work from home and, the nature of how, challenging the office market has been.
So yes is the answer. We are working this as a build to suit for a specific end user that we can't disclose at this time.
Of course. Thank you.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. And so my comment then is for the larger group and for our community members in particular, just as a reminder of how the mechanics of this particular type of program works in terms of tax increment financing. So today we have a vacant piece of land that the owner is paying property tax on. Tomorrow, we will have this development here that has a taxable value that is much greater than what they're paying today. They will continue to pay that property tax on that original piece, and the amount over and above that is reimbursed to them over a period of time. What it is not is taking a dollar out of anyone's pocket. So just wanted to tie a comment that our chairman made to the presentation, and just to let the group know that this is not giving money to the developers. It is reimbursing them over and above property taxes that the city will continue to receive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Director Wells, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I have just a couple of questions. The 1,600 employees, are those new positions, or are those being relocated from the region?
So again, I'm not at liberty to disclose the details related to that, but again, the transformational brownfield is really designed around, I believe, the employees and taxes captured on the site, so they will be located on this property.
Okay, so it may not be new positions, it could just be
I think it's fair to say
some
there are new positions that are involved, yes.
Okay. I guess I just noticed, I appreciate the design and the access. If you could maybe go to the slide that shows overpasses and underpasses. I noticed on the rendering that Market Street, we recently redesigned Market Street and spent a lot of effort humanizing it, making it more, accessible, providing mid-block crossings and center medians. I don't see those in the rendering, so I'm not sure if those are intended to be removed. I think there was one at Weston. The other point about pedestrian overpasses, certainly 131, I'm not sure the feasibility of folks walking under 131 at the river, but Fulton Street, perhaps there could be at-grade crossings there. We want to be cognizant of people with strollers, with different mobility devices, and asking folks to go up and down, especially along the Riverwalk. I would think that would be not ideal, certainly doing something at Fulton Street. And I know we have a GR Forward plan and River for All, which both contemplated at-grade crossings there. And so the other point, I guess, is the Oaks Street. When we worked on the Arena South plan, we looked at how to help businesses on Ionia and Ottawa feel more connected to the river. And Oaks was the one street that had that visual connection. Weston is blocked by Van Andel. So folks, and there are fences now and parking lots, so you really have to walk down and along Oaks to get there. And I'm hopeful that, I see in your rendering that if you go back to the one that Mindy had you put up, it looks like there's some vegetation and buffering there, but it does not, no, not that one. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's public access. And, learning from the Corwell project on Monroe that basically gated off public access to Bond, I hope that we have better solutions, considering we're using a lot of public funds to make this happen, that these spaces are truly public and publicly accessible, and wherever possible, we can create continuous connections from our rights-of-way to that riverfront. So that would include Oaks, obviously Weston, how we cross Fulton Street, how we move under 131. And if we're doing transformational projects, I would hope that partners at MDOT and other state authorities are on board with all of this and making these initiatives easy when it comes to public facilities. So to the extent that you have a role in that and others who are here listening, I think that we need to make that a priority. And then further, I appreciate your commitment to WBE, MLBE. I hope that you can continue your engagement efforts with the BIPOC community, Black Wall Street, other nonprofits in our community that are working with minority businesses today, so that they can become more involved in what you're doing here. So I know that was a lot, but
Well said.
a lot of
Thank you.
feelings. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? I just have two, just to button this up quickly. Joe, you made a comment earlier how critical occupancy is to obviously getting the incentives. And just for clarity, I mean, that's specifically the income tax component, correct?
Correct, yeah. The transformational brownfield incentive, we're going through the underwriting process right now with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and their third-party underwriter, which is SB Friedman out of Chicago, and sort of evaluating all of the assumptions we're making in the financial models. And then the actual incentive that comes into the project after we've completed and built it is going to be a function of who is actually working in the building and who is actually living in these buildings. So to the extent we have 10% vacancy in our residential units, the TBP income streams are reduced by 10%, if that makes sense. So obviously we have a motivation to ensure that this is full. We don't want vacancy sitting in the building because the incentive is a function of occupancy.
Okay, thank you. Last thing, I think just to tie together a lot of the comments that we've heard to date, I think it would be helpful ahead of our October 16 meeting to, come back with a little bit more robust visuals and connections to some of these public amenities, and maybe even to go so far as to make some connections with how this investment is benefiting existing businesses downtown, sustaining those investments that have been made. I think that would be helpful just to make sure that, people are very clear on the impact that this project is having and feel as though, they're being heard, and appreciate your consideration for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll see you next month. Okay, our last discussion item. We have a presentation regarding a proposed Grand Rapids land bank.
Good morning. I just wanted to follow up from the last meeting and the correspondence over email about just what we're intending here this morning. This is meant to be an overview of land banks, and so we've invited Joseph back from the land bank as well as Jim Tischler, and hope that this can help bring more awareness to what we're trying to accomplish at a citywide level. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. And just, I guess, to be a little time sensitive here, we do have another meeting after this, so I'd like to try to keep this within, say 15, 20 minutes, and hopefully we'll be blown away with a lot of great information here. So thank you.
I'll just be getting warmed up after 15, 20 minutes. No, we're very sensitive to your time. And this is just some Land Banking 101. I'm going to, again, Joseph Rivet, I'm Director of the State Land Bank. We're going to just talk quickly about basically what land banks are. Then Jim Tischler will sort of marry in the concept of brownfields in land banks, because they're cousins for sure. I'm going to figure out how to make this advance. My apologies.
Sorry, I'm going to try one real quick, one more time to make this full screen.
State land banking began 20 years ago, 2004, with the passage of the state. The state passed the Fast Track Land Bank Authority Act, and it was to address, as you can imagine, blighted and problematic structures across the state of Michigan. Obviously, it began with the concept of addressing issues in urban communities. The Detroit Land Bank has 68,000 properties in its inventory. That gives you an idea of the scale. Some of our smaller land banks, we have 51 across the state, have 4 properties or 3 properties in their inventory. So the tools are the same, but the scope and activity varies greatly throughout the state. So obviously, land banking is aggregating parcels for future sale or redevelopment. That's the goal of what land banking is. A land bank itself is the organization, quasi-governmental, and we do our best to make unproductive property productive again. That's the bottom line. And we have abandoned, foreclosed, surplus properties, and we're moving into what we like to call land banking 2.0 or 2.5, where we're beginning to partner as community development partners in various areas. And so we now have a partnership with the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy on a piece of property up north. It was a perfect opportunity for us to do some redevelopment and for them to conserve some property. And so that gives you an idea of the scope of the things we're doing in land banking right now. As noted, the land bank law came in 2003, but we needed to do some additional legislative activities to make the whole process work. The Tax Reverted Clean Title Act allows us some ability to quiet titles, move quickly, but also gives us a potential revenue stream, what we call our 550. Not unlike the capture you talked about today, the TIF capture. Under our process, if we sell a property, we can capture up to 50% of the generated revenue for 5 years to help fund the land bank. So the legislature, in its wisdom, and interestingly enough, I passed that bill when I was a member of the legislature in 2003. We wanted to try and make land banks be able to generate revenue so they could continue to operate moving forward. There's another important part of the land bank. Any land bank property is tax exempt. And so that's the last piece of legislation that needed to get passed in order for us to function the way we do. 51 land banks across the state, 50 counties. As you know, Representative Grant was successful in passing legislation last year that allowed cities with over 50,000 people in a county that does not have a land bank to create a land bank. And so Grand Rapids, and we're also discussing this concept with the city of Warren. Detroit, of course, is its own unique animal. They have a city land bank and have for many years. So land banks can acquire, hold, sell, remediate, demolish, rehabilitate. Basically, any real estate function we can do in the land bank. We can convey easements, of course, operate property and receive rentals or sale proceeds. We can rent property. We can build on property. We can quiet title, which is often important when we find abandoned properties. We can clean up the title so that that property can be sold and reused in the future. Property of an authority and its income and operations, as I mentioned, is exempt at this point. all land banks are TIF eligible through Act 381, the Brownfield Authority. So Jim's going to talk a little bit more about the marriage between brownfields and land banks, but that it is a natural fit where we can work together. A couple things we can't do is obviously condemn property, do taxes, or get involved in casinos. 2003, when this bill passed, casinos was the conversation every single day in the legislature, so that's how that happened. So what's our partnership? Ultimately, if you create a land bank, we will sign an intergovernmental agreement. Local land banks, of course, act independently, but they do provide us reports, and we keep in very close touch. We provide a substantial amount of grant money to our local land banks. Right now, we're moving $150 million worth of blight and blight elimination through our local land bank network. We are also happy to provide all kinds of technical or program expertise. We also work closely with the Michigan Land Bank Association. And that network is very useful for a lot of our land banks as well. And we're happy to, work to support your work with our staff and expertise that we've amassed over 20 years at the State Land Bank. So what else can we do? We can borrow money, apply for grants, manage properties, enter contracts, invest money. We are a very unique entity in state government, the State Land Bank, because we act independently. We are an independent authority. We're like a type 1 state agency. So we have the ability to do some processes that most state government activities can't. So we can, for instance, negotiate one-on-one with a developer. We don't have to go through a procurement process that a lot of our state, our state entities and organizations have to do. So that kind of flexibility is what makes land banks very, I think, unique and flexible and nimble to do some really great projects across the state. I apologize. I'm going to have Jim just talk a little bit about some of the marriage between 381, brownfields, and land banks, and we'll try and stay on time.
Okay, thanks, Joseph. Good morning to y'all. And my name's Jim Tischler. I'm the Development Director for the State Land Bank. But before I did that, and before I worked for the state of Michigan, I spent close to 15 years in local government, and I was involved before day one with Act 381. I was part of the group that actually brought that statute to the legislature, got it adopted. I was involved in every amendment process in 2000, 2003 with the Land Bank and all the way through to the present time. So I've seen brownfields, or what I like to call the Project-Based Tax Increment Financing Act, because that's what it is now, through its changes over time, to the present time. And I've also been involved, not in the origination of Act 258, the Land Bank Act, but the amendments that happened since then. So I've seen and been involved on both sides. And what I can tell you is this. First of all, your land bank is a real estate agency, okay? It has all the powers of real estate, as Joseph mentioned. It is, in our opinion, the most powerful public sector real estate entity under law, and it's designed for specific purposes, as Joseph mentioned. That tool is now available to you. But the best way that you can think of this relationship between land banks and brownfields is like this. They were intended back in 2003 to be married together. The reason it hasn't happened to date is because the practices have been separate. Brownfield got started in the mid-90s with 381, and Land Bank got started in the mid-aughts with Act 258. So your opportunity now is to use those tools collectively to be really powerful, not just in financing eligible activities, which is what you do as a Brownfield Authority, but also prepping sites, identifying them, banking them, even getting involved early stage to control them, to move them through, to make them productive for use with your financing tools as the Brownfield Authority. So the approach in Land Bank 2.0, as you see on this slide, is to bring them together. That's what it is. Bring them together and use those tools to leverage, helping, in our case, we would help local units of government organize, but you're in this role now, to proactively look at real estate development with for-profit developers and nonprofit developers in combination, and then be a platform to actually facilitate those tools to make the productive reuse that you want. Got it. So in Act 381, there's a couple specific areas that you would pay attention to as you start to look at this. One is eligibility. As Joseph mentioned, every property that is under control of you as a land bank, or us, Rainier Land Bank, is directly eligible. Again, by design, because the concept was those properties should have the automatic basis to move to productive reuse, and that's the origin of the linkage going back to 2003. So in two sections of Act 381, these are mentioned. Traditionally, it was tax-reverted property. That's the item at the bottom. But in the amendments of about 9 years ago now, dating myself here, all land bank properties were classified as blighted, whether or not they have a blighted structure on them. By definition, that was the legislature's attempt to say any property owned or controlled by land bank, by definition, is eligible. Your staff probably knows this pretty well. You might too as well. And by the way, this doesn't include the housing activities now. We need to update this slide. But what you're looking at is a list of all the eligible activities under Section 2 of Act 381. And if you understand that section pretty well, it's almost like a pyramidal or stack structure. Activities eligible for all properties. Then comes activities eligible for core communities, like Grand Rapids. Now comes activities for housing eligible activities. That's the amendment from last year. And at the top of the pyramid are activities eligible for land bank controlled properties, which under the section of law, it now states that a land bank controlled property is eligible for everything else, including housing, by the way, without a housing study, okay, and the specific land bank activities. Now, this is, again, an older slide, and you might be able to see it's a little highlighted green in there in item 13, because 5 years ago, the concept of housing TIF originated in land banks using this section of Act 381 to control properties with a developer and provide assistance and discount a sale of properties. That activity led to discussions and interests and such to what you have now as housing TIF today. So what does this mean for your land bank? As I said before, you have a real estate tool and function that is directly connected to your operations as a Brownfield Authority. And if you choose to use that tool, you can become really proactive and really powerful to moving what you as a municipality want to see happen, not just in response to a developer proposal, that's always good, but you can initiate. You have that ability to initiate, and you have that real estate tool attached to your financing mechanism. So any of these activities, not just your regular land bank, we're going to do environmental work, we're going to do site prep, acquisition and such, but you can do anything else that's related to real estate as long as it's tied to an eligible activity. How are we doing on timing?
I got a couple more slides.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You have any questions for me at this point, or we want to wait to the end?
You can wait till the end real quick.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your time.
Maybe. There we go. Okay, just real quick. So I alluded kind of at the end of the meeting last month that we do a lot of work already with land bank properties. So just quick background. I think probably all of you are familiar that the city has over time acquired tax foreclosed properties or other, I think all through tax foreclosures through Kent County, and originally had a partnership with the Kent County Land Bank, which closed several years ago now. After that was shut down, we entered into an agreement with the State Land Bank and essentially work with them they hold the properties, they maintain them for us, and they facilitate the sale of those properties for us. So until 2022, we could only sell these properties, these residential properties that we control with the State Land Bank to nonprofit developers. We had a lot of interest from folks that aren't nonprofits, from individuals and other entities that wanted to purchase these lots and build housing, but up until the passage of City Commission Policy 900-63, we could not sell those properties. So with that, we have now been able to work with individuals and organizations, and we've sold a number of properties over the last couple of years through that process. So basically, they submit an application. If it's for residential, we move that forward. There is some requirements that they have to be ready to do a project there. So we're asking them to have, preliminary financials completed. They have to meet with the planning department to make sure what they can build is okay on that lot. And then we take it to City Commission where we ask for approval of an option agreement, which the State Land Bank facilitates on our behalf. There's a little bit more work they do to make sure that final financials are in place, and they do submit for building permits. And then at that point, we sell the property, and the State Land Bank facilitates that sale for us. So we do a lot of this work already, and we'll continue to do that moving forward. Doug?
All right, and so, perfect. Next steps. So, and this is the end, and then you can ask questions. So we are submitting a memo and resolution for a commission vote on October 8th to actually formally allow Mayor Bliss to sign the IGA and establish the land bank. Within that first period of time, we're talking about dates, but at the first meeting, the Articles of Incorporation, bylaws, and operating policies and procedures need to be passed by the board. And so those are being drafted right now, and of course we'll get input and feedback and all of that. But that is a requirement to get that done at the very first meeting. We will work internally to transition that portfolio from the State Land Bank. We are already making some moves on the list of properties and figuring out what can be done with them. And then we also need to start coordinating with partners throughout the community to really explore what collaborations and what priorities we want to focus on. This is going to be a fantastic tool for the city to address some of the needs that we continuously hear. And so we are excited about this opportunity, and what potential exists within it. Saying that October 8th goes well, which it will, we will set the first meeting and then, of course, get back to all of you on that. And so I believe that is all of them for right now. So what questions do you have for any of us?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the efficiency on the presentation there. I did want to make sure our group had some time to discuss and ask questions. So thanks again. But yeah, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the overview. And I'm going to call you, where's your colleague? Mr. Public Act 381. No, I think because I appreciate the lesson, and thanks for that time, Chair, because I think what we do isn't, it's not complex, but it takes time to absorb and adjust. And, to hear, I've heard the stories of, again, how other communities were using the language on the residential side and sort of some of that push and pull here. And, I think as municipalities, we want more certainty. And so I'm glad to be at this point to be discussing this. I'll say from a commission perspective, we had a good, robust conversation that Ms. Renero and Mr. Booth presented. And I do think, again, this is like part of the puzzle piece for us. The land bank, as you said, Doug, isn't the be-all, end-all, but is another important aspect as we add in all of these and like that pyramid analogy. I think some of the things that I'll remind our body that have been done was actually Doug's role was added 6 months ago now, maybe? 5 months? Okay, well, all right, splitting hairs. 5.5 months ago, and that was really part of that process as the business manager to say, we knew that we were undertaking significant work in our economic development area. This board certainly advocated that for the department. We were able to have that conversation through the appropriate budgeting process with the city. And so I think you're seeing some of that work happen. And as Ms. Renero mentioned, this work was happening even when the county land bank went away. We were still coordinating with Joseph and making sure that this happened. So I think it's a recognition of, yes, it is like something new, but it was something that's happening. I think working on a variety of efficiencies to make this work happen and how we might fit that into this body is something that I'm excited about because, and I'm forgetting your first name, Mr. Public Act 381, Jim. that analogy of being cousins. And so I think that was some really good leadership thinking from Ms. Raniero and the rest of the team of how this could fit together. So I think you've laid that out well here, and I'm certainly supportive of this as well. Thanks.
Okay, I've heard a lot here. And what I've heard is that we're already collaborating with the state for the sale of properties, things like that. How is making this formal changing much of anything?
I think there's a couple points. One, there are 50 local land banks across the state for a reason, because you know your community better than we do. You know what your priorities are better than we do. We're a small but mighty team of 9 trying to do this work across the state. We have 2,500 properties in our inventory. So Jim, his actual name is Jim Tischler. We have a lot of names for him, but we're going to go with Jim Tischler, is our development guy, right? He's the guy that we send out to do projects and sort of push the envelope and come up with new and creative ways to move things forward in the state of Michigan, especially with our inventory. But you have the ability to really sort of buckle into your community, and we've seen probably the greatest success of land banks that are locally driven. And so we can support, but we cannot do this work across the state, so it's far better for you to do your own.
I would just add that we love working with the State Land Bank. They have some awesome people over there. But they're, when working with individuals and working with organizations to purchase property and to move quickly, it's another kind of step in doing that, and it takes more time. And so I think it'll just also create some efficiencies locally, so we can get get properties into the hands of people so they can continue to build houses for us.
Just have a quick question. Thank you very much for the presentation, and it's exciting to see that we're looking at bringing this back into the city of Grand Rapids purview. Is there a vision that we might have similar criteria or process for disposition of this land, similar to how we have like an emerging developer program? I mean, is that something that the department is thinking about? I mean, before you said it was just nonprofit organizations, and now we've opened it up to any organization. I'm curious how we might, find those future purchasers of the properties and find ways that we can continue to kind of bolster that emerging, property owner developer concept.
Yeah, so I can touch a little bit on that. And and I don't know how much I want to, Sarah, maybe you can talk about this too, but, we've discussed alongside with partners another emerging developer initiative that's been shared with the City Commission. And in that process, we've kind of reserved the lots that we currently control that the State Land Bank owns on our behalf. I think there's 17 of those that are duplex lots, and the idea is that we would use those for an emerging developer initiative alongside those permit-ready plans that we've brought before you, which are, I think, nearing completion. So that's kind of one way we're looking at using that. And we do have, the property disposition policy that I referenced on this slide, where we kind of envision that as well. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity to talk through that more.
Can I add one thing there, Mr. Chair? Thanks, Jess, for that. And I think, the other piece was on that community partner side. So you talked about that ability. We've got our Affordable Housing Fund Board. We've got, just other bodies that we can pull from as well to make sure we're doing. I think sometimes it's just we're doing so much and we might not be able to share all of the specific stories. I think our corridor improvement authorities are going to be another avenue, and we've talked quite about that since Ms. Raniero has joined the city about how we could even maximize those impacts. So you heard some of that with the M&M Bakery work, and so I would say official partnerships, but also some of these other economic development authorities. Thanks.
Just Commissioner Isasi, I know that several of those corridor improvement authority plans include the vision or the ability, it's kind of written in there that they could acquire property and hold it and have options. So it's great to hear that the city commission and other entities are looking at tying all that together.
Mr. Chair? Apologize. I just want to raise one last item with you. I didn't mention this, but one of the showcase land bank projects across the entire state is in your town. It's at 2080 Union. I want to briefly mention that. That site, the original site, came to us from Kent Land Bank. Then Dwelling Place got involved. They came to us with the adjacent property, asked us to bank it, which we did. Then they came to you for Brownfield approval for their project, as well as creating a community land trust for that project. All that's built upon control of property, control by the land bank. That tool and platform to do those things is in your wheelhouse now.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I think I can speak for our board and say that there's consensus here that this is a tool that makes sense for our city. I mean, it's obviously has some precedent and been utilized successfully in the past. Maybe just one brass tacks question for staff. So we have I lost the slide. Was it October 9 City Commission meeting, I believe, or October 8th? Is there a time frame following that meeting that we would need to convene our first land bank meeting, and what does it look like in between? Because, frankly, this is the first time that many of us are kind of getting up to speed publicly on this, and just want to make sure we've got ample time to have some input on operations and policy and such.
Yeah, so there is a time frame that is in recommendations. I have discussed with Joseph here, and so we do have some flexibility with that. But yes, we will need to have that first meeting before the end of the year. Ideally it's 45 days, but we're looking for that flexibility so that we can essentially start having these meetings offset between EDC and Land Bank. So it would most likely be in the December meeting.
Yeah, I guess that's another question. So is the current thinking that this would be another meeting that's added on to our current meeting schedule, or we're going to have a separate meeting date?
That's something that we will discuss as we create the policies, procedures, and bylaws. Okay. That is something that, as the authority, you'll have that flexibility to really create.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I would say November feels better than October at this point, right? I mean, that's a week after the 8th. So right. I think if we've got a little time between now and November to sit down and process some of that, that would be helpful.
Are you going to say that?
I just want to call some attention to that date on the 8th of October, really to stand up the land bank, but very much intentional with the subcommittee thought from the last board meeting and just getting into some of the weeds, whether it's priorities or how, operation activities. So I feel like we definitely want to take time for that. So that would happen from my perspective between the 8th and that 45-day or 60-day window, before the end of the year. So that's really where I think the sausage making would happen.
And Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, when we went through the Brownfield residential TIF changes, if you all remember, there was our small subcommittee that met. So I think we might have to do a little bit more in the short term. So hopefully we can set it up really well and it'll be a well-oiled machine. And I know you had put that call out for additional.
Yes.
Kind of coming together, maybe a smaller group. And so I know we're getting, and I'm going to have to leave in about 10 minutes, but I know we have another meeting, but if we could perhaps try to figure that out, if we could all share our availability if we're able to join in that meeting to Ms. Rennero by the end of this week.
That would be great, because I gave you a deadline for the upcoming board meeting, but I didn't give you a deadline for actually sending in your volunteer time for talking more about the Land Bank Authority. So, and I did get a couple volunteers, so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Joe and Jim. Appreciate the presentation and staff. So it was very helpful to understand where we're heading with this. Okay. Our next item is other business. Staff, anything? Okay. Public comment not on agenda items. Okay, hearing none, I will move to adjourn.